Seven. Seven.
Seven?
There's something.
Yeah, four singers.
Four singers and three for the
Right,
Yeah,
seven.
yeah, but
Okay.
I forgot it's my API.
Good.
Well, we can put them on. Or maybe just leave them because one
Yeah.
of our drummers bringing this probably bring
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
yeah.
Two babies, two.
What do we got? 8:39.
Okay, we'll step out real fast. I'll grab my lunch stuff. No, I'm good.
I'll take two of these chairs off so we have seven.
Yeah. No, just maybe leave them now because we said there's other drummers. Oh, and folks that is at the.
Oh, really?
So that's what and that, I think there might be 5 minutes later coming.
You know,
They
when
could
do
be,
you know they're coming?
they could be here maybe I could probably just maybe use the name.
Yeah, leave some names.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll talk about it later on.
She's a lot of names. Oh, wow. We are so blessed.
You ordered a podium, sir.
We are the How heavy is it?
Not very heavy.
Okay. So we can like lift it on and off as we need it?
Yeah.
Sweet. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, and where did you want it placed?
We're gonna do. There's gonna be like a thing here, and then we'll just move it up on stage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you don't need it up on stage.
No, I
right
think
now?
if I make some room back here, we can just use it here for now.
Okay.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
I'm gonna put these on the side over here.
Get muted now. Yeah. Can you just give it a boot?
Hello?
As I can see without them.
I can't see without
Those are only. I got Persian.
Oh yeah. I turned 40 and then my eyes went.
Yeah. You know what that is? My fault. All three TVs. I checked out my family. Oh, right here, Frankie.
Oh my god.
Is it one of the earlier ones?
Well, I'm just kind of assuming it's one of the mics, right? Like the.
Oh, like it has it labeled as mics. I see.
Yeah.
I think you're being bamboozled.
I think I have. I think you are correct. We have been successfully bamboozled. Oh, handheld one, handheld two.
Okay.
Now we just got to figure out what we have. One extra one. So W, I'm just gonna write this down. W/L handheld equals handheld 2.
Because this is also handheld, but this is a one.
Okay, so turn that. Yeah, so let's unmute it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, sweet. We're cooking with fire now.
Okay.
This one or what do you want me to use?
Either one of these.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Suresh. Morning, by the way. Okay, thanks. Pretty much good to go? Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the PIA Annual Conference. How's it going? I got to say, that's very, very good for early in the morning. Thank you all for being here on time and in your desks. We really appreciate it. We're very excited to have our conference this year at the ATA Barnett House. I want to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, and we are going to open up the conference in a good way today with Becca Chase and family and the Abraham Lake Singers. I'm not going to say too much before we get into it. I just want to welcome everyone and say thank you all for being here. This is going to be an opportunity for us to learn, connect, and hopefully revitalize ourselves and our spirits a little bit. Living in Alberta is interesting and hard these days, to say the least. And we're also going to talk a little bit about scheming about how we can get rid of this government as well. We're a nonpartisan organization, but we are very, very, very politically engaged, and we care very deeply about this province, its lands, and all of us together as communities. So thank you for being here. Choose your own adventure. And with that, I would like to introduce a very good friend, Brent Burnstick, Pekka Chase.
Tantra, I'm Boston. Hello. My Cree name is Pika Cheese. I'm carrying it on from my great-grandfather, what we call Chapan. As he was, before the treaty was signed back in 1877, that was when our Treaty 6 was signed. But the original Treaty 6 was signed in 1876. So my Chapan and the four chiefs, because back in the day, a lot don't know the history, that before treaty was signed, our tribes all had four chiefs. And after the treaty was signed, the Indian Act came in. They eliminated and went down to one, where they can control them. And look at where we're at today. And that's the same thing I see with all walks of life. Then every individual has a heart, has a mind, open them up and truly understand who they are and the purpose they're on Mother Earth for. That's why I do what I've done, and I keep doing. I've done this for over 45 years, talking, but culturally, I'm going on just about 40 years. I was taught by the old elders of the past, the real way of doing ceremony. And I don't do it for the pocket with monetary. I do it from my heart. I do it for the people to help. Even when with breakfast this morning, I pull myself back. Why is, as a head man, I serve the people. I feed the people. So I let Brad know and others know that out of respect for you, because I have a lot of strength already. I can go on for days and days, maybe 3 days without having to put anything here. But it's that strength from my heart that keeps giving me that drive. So today, this morning, I led our sacred smuds. This is for you. I'm here to hopefully open up your minds, your hearts. And my message to you is we need to think about what we call our grandchildren that are not here today. Yes, we are here today and we have our living grandchildren. What about the ones that are not born here, not here yet? That's the way we think, us the indigenous people. We always think about 7 generations. And if we all thought like that, then maybe we would get balance and harmony and we could live side by side, sharing, caring, respect, love, compassion, being humble with each other, at peace. That's what I would like to see before it's my time to go to the spirit world. So with that, I will open this up with you, but I will not use a mic when I pray, because that when we came in our ancestors of the past, we never had this technology. So with that, I'll say a prayer for you and all of us here, and just to make it, to let you know that the smuts is here to help you cleanse your body and to hopefully give you a good spirit for what the purpose of this conference. So that's, I'll say a prayer for you, and then I'm going to walk around the building, this building here in the room, so that we are going to be protected by the good spirit, and that we have a good turnout, and let's focus on that for the future. Okay? Now speak in the English language. and Muslim means grandfather. We talk about book of Muslim creator and all relatives in the spirit world. I beg you, hear my prayer. I beg you to come here and bring your presence and make this a safe space that everyone can feel comfortable with each other. We're here today to make, hopefully make a difference for all living. Because we see, as you can see from up above, at the struggles that we're having today, and that is what we are going to stop now. Let's get the heart out there. Let's get our message of compassion and peace and love. Let's take care of our children. We have our own issues and concerns and problems in our own backyard. That's what we need to fix. And that could be in our own home. But with that, Creator, I'm asking you to
Stay outside.
come to me. You are to the west. We start to the west and go around circle. I'm asking you from the south. Bring that spirit. Bring the good knowledge. Bring your heart. Bring that vision. Bring your wisdom. And carry that on and win. And I'm calling on the animal spirit to come be with us. Because that's who we reflect on. Because they give us that strength, the vision, the love. Because everyone in the spirit takes care of their own. That's what we as humans need to be doing for ourselves. And I come back and to the next, and it's a full circle. That includes all of humanity. So with that, Creator, thank you, and I welcome you back to our world. So now I'll walk around for you. And if any would like, it's got to be up there. They'd like to come here.
Yeah, he's on the second parking lot. I was gonna meet him. Cause he was here when I came back.
Well, just, oh, I guess he's here. We're waiting for one of our drummers, and he just popped in. So we will do our opening. But what the first song we will be doing is an opening. What we call the drum song. This is what we call also our bosom. Because with this is where we get our spirit from. And it's a good spirit. And if we respect Him, He'll take care of all of us. You listen with the heart. The drum is like the heartbeat of your heart. So feel that when we start drumming, when we beat the drum, it's like your own heartbeat. So we'll do that. Open it up for you.
Hello, hello. Oh, you good? Okay.
All right. So I'm just going to ask, did you feel that in your heart? So the next one we're going to do is an honor song for all of you that are here and with ourselves, that we're going to make a difference for the future. We start today now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, today. We're here to really make that change. So we'll do that for you. This is for you, an honor song. And I'll talk with Brad, because there's another song that we can do, but it has nothing to do with war. This is about peace for what we're pursuing. So we have a song, it's called the Victory Song. And that's what I would like to sing here for the group in regards for peace with our hearts. And I'll explain myself. I have a mind, I got a body, and I got a spirit. So I need to take care of all three of those. And the other thing too is we got psychological, emotional, spiritual, and there's psychological, emotional, physical, right? See, because I've been doing a lot of this, and sometimes the why I kind of forget, but still in my heart. Because every day I practice to walk it. But again, that I'm trying to be humble as best as I can. But when I have individuals that don't that disrespect me, I cannot allow that any longer. We need to show them love, but we need to show that we're stern. But at that time, I'm still being humble because I'm not a violent man. I love yous all. We're here on Mother Earth for a purpose, and that's love. They say there's a lot of different nationalities. There's only 4 colors of the race, human race. Let's balance it. Because right now we're all topsy-turvy. Okay, so the next song we sing for you will be an honor song. And with that, it is open up for you, and let's make progress in the next 2 days. Let's make a difference for our future with our heart, clear mind. And with that, I appreciate. Thank you. Well, if you want, we can. If you guys want to come back later?
Yeah, for sure. Can we get a picture? Raylene wants a picture with all of us.
Okay, yeah, let's get your chair back. Just put your chair aside. How about we stand the drum up for you? And it's open for everyone if you guys would like to take photos. Brad, come on up. In the front, please.
Stop the presenters as they were coming in to tell them to go to the boardroom 10 minutes before their session. But now your name tag said that they were. Can you just? Thank you.
All right, that was an amazing opening. Can we give one more big round of applause for Brent and the Abraham Lake Singers, please?
How about just mention to them that the boys might have something later, so if they'd like, we can do the victory song.
The boys might.
Good one.
Yeah, and Brent just let me know that the boys might have something later and they might do a victory song for us, which is an amazing offering and gift. So thank you again, guys, so much. We really appreciate it. We like to start our conferences here at PIA in a good way. I think it's obvious to all of us in the room right now how critical treaty is, especially in these times. We have a provincial government that thinks that they can just rush out of Canada and ignore treaty. But the thing that they don't remember is that treaties existed far before Alberta did, and they'll exist far longer than the separatist off-gassing or whatever is going on does. Okay, so we're going to have treaty as long as we continue to be in right relationship with each other. And I know everyone in this room considers themselves to be a treaty person, and so do we. So thank you very much. Just a note of housekeeping. If you didn't eat breakfast, you missed it. But there's gonna be lots of good food, so please eat. The specialty meals will be laid out on the side there for folks who have some dietary things going on. The washrooms that are most accessible are right here outside the door to the right. If you are facilitating or presenting in a boardroom and you haven't connected with a volunteer yet, try to find a volunteer at the back of the room and they'll be able to get you set up with your AV and everything else. Joan at the back in the beautiful purple dress will help you out there. Hi, Joan. Morning. We have a lot of great partners and allies who are going to be tabling throughout the weekend. So we have Parkland Institute, Friends of Medicare, Firefly, Alberta Labor History Institute, Alberta Workers Health Center, and then a whole bunch of others upstairs as well. If you haven't signed the Forever Canadian petition yet, it's too late, but but they're here because they need more canvassers and more volunteers to make sure that this next phase goes well. Because as we know, Danielle Smith makes rules, then breaks her own rules. And yeah, I'm gonna say that one more time. And you know Danielle Smith? Yeah, she breaks her own rules. So we need to make sure that we're supporting one another. And that's what PIA is all about. We like to bring people together around common cause and collective action. So this conference is about building a coalition with the purpose of making sure that not only are we building towards getting rid of this government, but also deepening our relationships, forging new ones, and working together. Because we always hear we have so much more in common than what divides us. It's so true, but the messy work of working together can be hard. And so this conference is something that we like to do every year because it's not just about doing the SWOT or the power analysis or the power mapping or coming up with strategic plans. It's really about connecting with each other and finding ways to rejuvenate our spirit, renew our sense of purpose and collective action. And that's really important, I think, especially in these times, as we always say. Alberta is a weird place right now. It's a very weird place, you know. These are not normal times. There's a lot of conversation about whether we should be using the F word or the A word. You know what I'm talking about, fascism, authoritarianism. I think both are appropriate. Obviously, that doesn't mean that we lead with those words when we have conversations with all of our neighbors. But we're living in times where we have a government that is very dedicated to anti-governing and authoritarianism. And I think chaos is the purpose, right? When it comes to dismantling healthcare, Friends of Medicare is doing an amazing job on the front lines of defending what we have. And that's so important, right? Because that's the model. They break it, and by underfunding it and restructuring it and privatizing it, and then people who need access to healthcare are desperate for anything that they can find. And what they offer is private surgeries, private labs, you name it. And it's very, very too hard to imagine rebuilding things once they're gone. And so Friends of Medicare, PIA, Parkland Institute, all of our partners, all of you here are on the front lines of protecting what's left, which is very, very important. But what we would like to do at the same time is talk about what Alberta and what our communities could look like. Imagine starting from a conversation where we could say, what do we want our public systems to look like so that no one is left behind? What would it look like to actually have laws and policies that protect our land, air, and water? What would it really be to be in treaty relationship? What does that actually look like? And those are the kinds of conversations that we can have in spaces like this that then hopefully one day can happen in other spaces across the province. So that's why we're here today. Our conference is kind of a choose your own adventure. I'm a little bit chaotic. I like people to have fun. And so you get to bump into each other and meet new friends. So go to whichever thing inspires you and get to know a few new people. The idea that we're building towards here in this conference is a broad coalition with the express purpose of getting rid of this fascist authoritarian government. Which is going to be a lot of hard work, but I think we can do it. If we can't do it, who can? So we're going to, am I missing any housekeeping? Probably a ton. Parking is on the 3rd level. You probably already found it. We're going to get started with our workshops at 9:45. In the meantime, no? What time are workshops starting at? Oh, shoot. I forgot my favorite person. No, we're not getting started with workshops at 9:45. We're getting started with an amazing keynote from someone who came all the way from Ottawa by way of Vancouver, Winnipeg, Toronto, New Brunswick, Edmonton, Calgary, who has been dotting the country for the last, 3-4 years, and who has built an incredible coalition of allies and queer and trans activists from across the country. And she is on the front lines of making sure that we have the rights that we need and deserve and that everyone deserves in this country. So we're very excited to welcome Faye here. Faye Johnstone, can you stand up and wave? Thank you. Yes, Queen. It's so good to have you here, Faye. We're very excited about that. And so the reason why we wanted to open and invite Faye in particular is we had a conversation about what it means to protect our rights. And we know that, what do? This is the playbook. They come for communities that they think are easy to pick off. And what Faye and Momentum and the trans community here in Alberta and across the province has shown is that that is not a community that is going to be easily picked off. They are going to fight and build allies and make sure that we are protecting the rights of not only the trans community, but every single person in this country. And that is amazing. Thank you for all the work you do, Faye. It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, that's about all it for me. I don't really want to talk too much because last night we had a gala and it was crazy. I was tap dancing a little bit. Did a silent auction. Trisha made me get up there and dance. It was wild. But we're just really excited, and we hope that you are too. I guess I should say that if you're not a member yet of Public Interest Alberta, you should become a member because we really need all of the support that we can get right now. I can tell you that as the executive director of a nonprofit society, every month is something that we look to with trepidation and excitement because the UCP government is making it very hard for groups like ours to do our work. I'm not sure if you've heard of Bill 32. I feel like when people hear bill number whatever, they go to sleep. But Bill 32 was passed a couple of years ago. The regulations are coming out or have come out today. And what it does is it says that democratic organizations like labor unions cannot decide what they want to support in terms of organizations. And what that does is it constricts the democratic space for conversation. And they say they're doing this because they want to give workers choice, right? We've seen that playbook before. It's such bullshit. But what it does is it shrinks the conversation and it makes communities more easy to pick off because they know that organizations like Public Interest Alberta, FOM, Parkland, you name it, the labor movement, Alberta Federation of Labor, have been on the front lines for decades fighting back against the encroachment on human rights. And so for me, it's very important that I stand here on behalf of PIA and say that we need your support as much as ever. We appreciate everything that you do, and we know that I think with the right energy and spirit and organization, a little bit of organization, we can and we will get rid of the UCP government. I think we all know that, right? Okay. So with that, I was wondering if
Give you a quick reminder, back in the day, Paul Martin and Liz Rothman put the statutes and whatever else on us as national and overturned.
that's a good reminder. Brent just reminded me that Ralph Klein and Paul Martin said that statutes are not written in stone and they can be overturned. And so when it comes to Bill 32 and Bill 11, we can stop that legislation and we can get rid of it.
Anyone else? I got a lot of information, knowledgeable. I got documents in my bag in the vehicle. They'll be there tomorrow, but I'll be around for a little bit if you guys would like to see something. I'll bring it out. And I was talking with Brad in my research. I'm a political researcher for the last 45 years. In my research, I found that Canada might not have a constitution. And I do have that document. So I'm going to share it with Brad. And I'd asked Brad to make some posters. And Brad, where are the posters numbers?
Yeah, we had him in the room.
Yeah. And then we're gonna put them out and maybe read them and feel from the heart, like I told you, because there's a good meaning in that message. With that, we're going to sing the song, the victory song, for you and the children. And never forget the youth and our children. Let's bring them into our circle. What we need also is the babies, because the babies are going to teach us of the future. They are the future. So let's teach them in the good way. Let's go for it. little background for who I am. Again, my name is Pika Cheese. I'll have to say it. The church name is Brent Burnstick. Uh, I had a rough lifestyle and when I was growing up, right from the time I was a child. I was incarcerated when I was a youth. But then, like I mentioned earlier about going back to the culture, and after I touched that culture, my life changed to the good because it brought me back to Mother Earth and to be grounded because there's a lot of distractions out there. Look at the bars, alcohol. Look at the drugs that are out there today. All mixture of drugs now. And that's affecting everyone's life, our children, the human race. Look at all the homelessness out there. And let you know that our drum group and our family, we go sing at all kinds of events like that to support, to share our message also. We sang at City Hall, Edmonton City Hall, for the homeless. Brad has invited us because our heart is with the people also of the land. And at that time when I spoke for the homeless, I mentioned that I was on my healing journey for a very long time, and I am healed, but I also have to say that how could I be totally healed when I see the suffering yet on Mother Earth? So my heart still bleeds, but it gives me that drive to hopefully make a difference, to send our message out. So that's who I am. And I've been with my wife. We're going on 23 years. We have 6 beautiful babies, 3 women, 3 men. So there's that balance. And my wife and I, we talked about how many children we want. And for our belief, we always try to go with an equal number. So for our family now, there's 8 of us, so that's an even number. So we're in balance with Mother Earth and who we are in our spirits. And I taught them, my babies, from the first time they sat up to where they are today. And we as parents, we get a lot of compliments from individuals for what we've done with our youth. So I mentioned to them, please give it to them because they are walking what I taught them. We had taught them, and others had helped. Because I told them, all we are is teachers and messengers. So please give it to the youth, give them that compliment that they deserve. And we have to understand that when youth get into mischief, whatever, who is allowing that? Maybe who's teaching? We gotta take the blame ourselves as parents, grandparents, because if our youth are going in a different path, why is that being allowed? And then that circle is broken. But if you want to keep that circle strong, you have to watch them every day of your life, every minute, and keep them where you would like to go in that direction. Because you see it already, right? See it where the world is. With that, my heart is to you. I hope we connected with you. And if we did, let's make a difference. Hi.
All right, awesome. Thank you again, guys. We really appreciate it. That was great. Thanks, Raylene. Yeah, so our first keynote speaker, hailing all the way from Ottawa, is a new great friend of ours and mine. You know, it's been a whirlwind. We first crossed paths in Calgary at a CUPE thing, and I've been following the work of Momentum for a long time. And I remember one rally we had, I got a call or a text out of the blue from Faye. She was like, hey, do you want some signs and a big banner? I was like, yeah, okay. And then it was printed within an hour at like some person's house, and then we had it at the steps of the legislature. So Faye and Momentum have been doing incredible work supporting these organizations on the ground across the country in defense of trans rights and human rights. And for that, we just appreciate you so much, and thank you for being here. So please welcome Faye Johnstone.
Good morning, everybody. How are you all doing? Okay, there is still hope alive in Alberta. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here, and big shout out to Brad for the convening that is happening in this space. I think in these times of crises, and not just crises hitting one community or one minority, but crises that are like slapping every group one at a time and then restarting the loop every 6 hours. This kind of unifying approach is exactly what we need. I think our opposition wants to divide and conquer. Our opposition wants us to be scared of our neighbors and to be fighting one another instead of putting the onus and responsibility back on governments that are failing to deliver healthcare, failing to invest in our schools, failing to support fair wages for workers, and stripping rights away from vulnerable kids. Because why not throw more gasoline on the fire when you have a need to distract the public? It's a great time to be in Alberta as a trans person. My running joke is that when I land, I directly defy Danielle Smith's agenda because I increase rather than decrease the trans population. That is truly the most depressing joke that one can open a conference with. She's just trying to reduce a community. 0.3% of the population is really scary. Don't think about the holes in your kids' classrooms. Don't think about the wait lists to get access to a family physician. She's going to privatize those anyway. Don't think about the fact that wages are not increasing and that the rights of workers are being threatened. Think instead about the 15-year-old trans kid and the fact that maybe they're able to be themselves at school. Maybe they're able to use a different name or a different pronoun. But instead of supporting that kid, Premier Danielle Smith has painted a target on that child's back. I'm going to start with some depressing truths about the trans experience in Alberta today. And I don't say that as a trans Albertan. I say that as a gal from Eastern Canada. I'm sorry. I hang out here as much as I can. And the prairies like me. I'm known in Saskatchewan. I'm going to Manitoba next. And I'm not from Toronto. I'm also not from Calgary. If you make the right jokes, they'll be like, okay, you know how we think here. No, but the harsh reality is that some kids are going to school in Alberta today, and they're sitting beside classmates who have literally more human rights protections than they do. There are kids who are going to school and looking at their classmates and processing the fact that the Premier has given them permission to be mistreated. There's all of the legislative and policy impacts of these anti-trans policies. There's the denial of health care and the violation of the sacrosanct relationship between a patient and their family physician, and that is deplorable. But the deeper concern to me is a social environment where we say it's okay to pick on the kid who is different. Many of us, likely when we were in grade school, we were different in some way. At a lefty conference, you probably had a briefcase or a weird hat. There's a few of you who probably feel called out. I'm sorry. Not everyone goes from high school to their campus Marxist club. But we all know what it's like to be the kid who's a little bit different in some kind of way. And many of us struggle in that environment. And it's an experience that many of us have had for generations, if we're particularly from historically marginalized communities. I often implore my broader queer community to understand that even though the kids have weirder pronouns and stranger hair than your generation might have, they have the same experience of a gay kid who was shoved into a locker in the 1990s. You both know what it's like to have your classmates treat you badly because of who you are. About a month ago, I was in Edmonton, and my organization, Queer Momentum, partnered with Transaction Alberta, who are the kick-ass folks in Alberta doing grassroots organizing alongside many peers to respond to Premier Danielle Smith's draconian assault on the rights of trans kids. And we supported a group of 10 parents. 10 parents of trans kids to show up on the steps of the legislature the day before March 31st, which is Trans Day Visibility, a day where until about 5 years ago, we would see the most adorable, wholesome news stories about like the kid who is skateboarding and has those weird hair and pronouns. But those parents decided to make themselves visible at the Alberta legislature because the Premier has made it less safe for their kids to do just that. And you know, in my work, I am often in tears and emotionally heartbroken because of the stories that I hear. My job is to be a public face, but also to be visiting communities everywhere and anywhere that I can. Because one of the changes in the last decade is that I think local struggles have become more localized and not connected in to that regional, provincial, or national movement. And I think that's a reality across all of our causes. And so I get to be on the road and meet with trans people and queer people and parents all day, every day. And it's a blessing, but it's a heartbreaking one because you hear the stories of adversity. You hear the trans person who is more hesitant to be out at their workplace today than they were 5 years ago. You see it in the small things, in the social environment that just feels less safe. When a trans person first comes out, we don't always look our best. It's an evolution of aesthetics. Y'all have an unfair advantage. You just watched TV and you saw people and you could grow up and look like those people. We had a weird phase. Some of us grew and flourished through that weird phase, and it's been a great time. But for many of us in those early days, we are more viscerally adapting to a world that is perceiving us differently. I often tell the story of when I first walked out of my apartment in downtown Ottawa, looking a little bit more like I do today. And I used to look quite different. I was a hockey jock. I'm from a military family. I grew up in small towns. And that first moment stepping out of my apartment was the scariest moment I've ever experienced. It felt like everyone was staring at me. And I had really bad eyebrows that I often describe as dead worms. My mom was a military mom, so she really didn't know what to do when I came out and how to teach me any tactics or strategies or what conditioner is. But that moment was really scary because suddenly it feels like everyone's looking at you because you're different. And then you adapt, and then you learn and you grow and you get used to it. It's not that the weirdness that other people project on you goes away, it's that it becomes more normal. And then maybe your aesthetic, your presentation changes, and you're not quite as noticeable. Some of us stick in that noticeability space, and it's a lovely and powerful space to be in. And some of us, we look, we adapt, and I'm less visible as a trans person now than I used to be. But that was a really scary time. And the struggle with this environment is that we're feeling it get back to those moments when we first came out. We're feeling that heightened scrutiny when we walk out of our doors. Because again, it's not actually about the policies. Yes, it is about the policies, but it's about a world where we demonize gender and sexual diversity. I think all too often, the public has understood this struggle to be about 0.33% of the population. It's the tiny fragment of society that happens to be trans. And I implore you to understand that that is exactly what Premier Danielle Smith wants you to think. She wants you to imagine it's about that tiny percentage of the population over there that you should be worried about. When if you actually look at the policies that she's introduced in the name of protecting kids and supporting parents, she has first, again, violated the relationship between a family physician and their patients. If you go into a doctor's room, lab, office. When you go into a doctor's office today, if you're a parent of a trans kid and you say, my kid is trans, they've known they're trans for 10 years, and their social worker supports, and they support, and we support our child accessing medically necessary evidence-based health interventions, the doctor sits there, no matter what he wants to say, a little pop-up comes up and it's Danielle Smith's face. And she says, I know better as a politician than you do as a parent or than you do as a family physician. And what do we say to that? And shame and no, both are good answers. What happens when a government is able to interfere politically in the delivery of medically necessary health services? When Danielle Smith introduced or announced, I believe it was about 2 years ago now, maybe a year. It's hard to keep track of all of the icky policies. Soon after she teased these policies, there was polling done by an anti-choice organization. When you look at New Brunswick, where all of this began, where we saw the first premier introduce policies to restrict the freedom of trans kids to be themselves at school, do you know what organization was the most engaged, the most active in supporting that premier? The Campaign Life Coalition, Canada's pro-life lobby. They mailed hundreds of thousands of disgusting postcards to households across New Brunswick because they understand what we as progressives have unfortunately often failed to understand. This is not about a tiny segment of the population. This is about ideological interference in our healthcare system and the violation of your bodily autonomy so that they can use the trans kids to leapfrog from there to parental consent legislation when it comes to young people accessing reproductive health services. And so they can leapfrog from there, as they have done in America, to say, actually, we're not sure if this abortion thing is a good idea to begin with. And so we're gonna not just reduce access, which conservative governments have done for decades, we're actually gonna look to cease the allowance of those services to begin with. The second policy, of course, that she has introduced is in relationship to sports. Now, I like to do a little test. Do we have any cisgender, i.e. non-trans gals in the space who are over 5'8"? If so, can you raise your hand? I am so sorry, you're now only allowed to play sports against each other. Because otherwise you have an unfair biological advantage because you're tall. And you probably have broader shoulders than the 5'2" gals in the space. I am all for a conversation about fairness in sport. I want to talk about how Michael Phelps has weird feet. And I also want to have the conversation about the fact that a white kid from a wealthy family is going to have an unfair advantage because of who they can afford to pay as a private coach versus a racialized kid from a small community. I want to talk about what's going to happen to our queer gals, and I'm going to point out, can I use Janice as an example? Okay, so Janice is 12 years old again and is giving tomboy left, right, and center. And maybe she's kicking ass at baseball, tennis, football. And there's this dad in the stadium, and he sees the haircut. He sees the plaid shirt. And he says, I don't think that's a real girl. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna report her, or him, and I'm gonna make sure that she has to prove, to be subjected to the embarrassment of having to prove what her genitals look like. We live in a province where you live in a province. I'm visiting a province where the government wants to legislate and decide who is woman enough to play on which sports teams. Who is woman enough, because we know where this goes, to access a woman's shelter. I do not expect everyone to get on board with the trans agenda, though you're welcome to. We're fun. We have better hair. And better sex. You don't have to, be on board with all of it. And I actually think that's important to be clear on. I do not care about your personal opinions about trans people. I care that you believe in the privacy rights. I care that you believe in the independence of our healthcare system and the sacrosanct relationship between a physician and their patients. I care that you understand that we actually deserve to have real dialogue about complicated issues rather than slogans punching one another. When Premier Smith started this all, and when Premier Higgs, who's no longer a premier, and Premier Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, when they did this, they used the language of parental rights. And they created this concept that it's a fight between the rights of parents and the rights of trans kids. And unfortunately, we fell for it. For a long time, I've struggled because it seems like everyone who isn't a transphobe thinks that the requirement is just to go on a stage and say trans women are women, and that everything's gonna be okay if you repeat those terms. But they came out and they said parental rights. And how did we respond? We said parents don't have rights, they have responsibilities. Now that sounds smart. It's brilliant. It is indeed true. Parents are duty bearers under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. We do not have specific legislation that enshrines the rights of parents, and with good reason. But if you are a mom in a small town who's, probably reading, what's the Western Standard? You've been, primed to see these, these caricatures of my community, right? Like the odd trans person who does something horrendous as if, straight women have never done a bad thing. Have you met your premier? Walking, talking example of the problem. Sometimes I lose my train of thoughts after a joke. No, but they've created this story, but if you're that mom, you don't hate trans people, right? You don't probably have an issue with your trans neighbor or the gay boy who lives next door and has a nice white picket fence. You don't have an issue with those things. But you're probably worried about your kid. And maybe you're from a different, like a faith minority or a cultural minority. Maybe your first language isn't English. Maybe it is, and you're just really confused about this gay stuff. When we say you don't have rights, you have responsibilities, we push that parent further away from us. The problem that we have faced is that for a long time, the tides were on our side. Progress was in the air, and we were on the up and up and up. In the last decade, we passed human rights protections for trans communities. We banned conversion practices. We apologized for the purging of LGBTQ plus Canadians from the Federal Public Service, from the RCMP, and the Canadian Armed Forces. We were on the up and up. And I think in that period, we imagined that homophobia, that transphobia, and misogyny had just gone away. And I do indeed think we got complacent. I think we actually got arrogant. I think we thought that we could get on our high horse and lecture to everyone who didn't agree with us. And I think that we did it because it felt powerful. Because we are used to organizing against the odds. We know that injustice is a thing, and we want to be righteous and claim power by saying, hell no, you're a bigot, you're a fascist, you're a homophobe, you're a transphobe. And then they developed a playbook to counter that exact strategy. Because in Canada today, trans people look like scary radicals who are coming for your kids. And they look like concerned governments who care about parents. And in that narrative, we cannot and will not win. My biggest advice, my biggest call to action, my deepest encouragement is to leave our gender studies and grad studies lingo in our backyards. I love me going off about cis heteronormativity and the heteropatriarchy. I will smoke a joint and have those good convos with you. But when I'm chatting with a dude bro at the local dive bar that I often end up hanging out in, cheap beer is good beer, I don't go off about cis heteronormativity. I don't pick a fight around, pronouns over preferred pronouns or which goddamn version of our ever-growing acronym you happen to use. We will change it. And no, you will not be able to pronounce the new version either. We need to talk about freedom. The freedom for any kid to explore who they are. We need to talk about building schools where kids are welcome to celebrate their identity. Kids of any culture and from every community. We need to talk about building a Canada where regardless of your race, gender, or class, regardless of where you're born or what your first language was, you are able to live a good life in a healthy and safe community. We have struggled in the last decade to have hard conversations across difference. And I think we see it sometimes within our movements as well. For a long time, it has felt like we're all grandstanding to be the most big and bold radical lefty, and I love to be the biggest and boldest radical lefty. But I worry that we have spent a lot of time speaking to those who already think and organize and vote like we do. And so we have used language and built a language ecosystem that reinforces those exact tendencies. And when a farmer is having a hard time paying his bills, the last thing he wants is to be lectured about your preferred pronouns. And I get it, right? I want to build that bigger and better world. I believe that we can build a future where gender and sexual diversity and liberation is afforded to all. And I think that we do it by bringing the boys on our side. I think we do it by reaching the moms, by telling the story of what it's like to be a mom. You know, there's one of the parents who joined us in Edmonton at the end of March. She spoke about how when the policies were introduced by the premier, she was devastated and terrified for her kid. And that in fact, her kid self-harmed in response to those policies. Not because of specific health care that was taken away, but because of the lack of hope. The lack of hope that this 14-year-old had. We need to tell stories like that. The premier wants you to be reacting. She wants you to be saying crisis and crisis and crisis. And we do need to respond to crisis and crisis and crisis. We cannot let her get away with everything that she's getting away with. But exactly as Brad alluded to, we also have to build that positive vision. That coalition that says we deserve better and better as possible. Not just for me, not just for you, but for each and every Albertan, for each and every Canadian. My biggest invitation to you is to keep having conversations. You know, to have conversations with the person who disagrees with you. And to not do it with your fists up, but to do it with an aim of understanding where they're coming from. Most people are not as staunchly political as those of you in this room are. Most people, I know Alberta is a bit of a different scenario with your de facto two-party structure and the long reign of the UCP or whatever version of them has existed before. But most people, struggle to remember who they voted for the last time. They struggle to name their MLA or their city councilor. Many don't even know they have a school board trustee. You have those here. Okay, good. In Ontario, we're getting rid of them as quickly as we can. But most people are not as militant or as engaged as we are. Most people, if you ask them, what are the things that matter to you, they're going to talk about the cost of gas. They're going to talk about worry for their kids' future. And often when we see these, culture war issues, they become the convenient target, the convenient excuse. Yes, for our neighbors, when they're feeling that precarity, when they're feeling that economic uncertainty, they too will lean into blaming exactly who their government wants them to. In Alberta right now, it is largely trans people and newcomers. It is two communities that have been subjected to decades and decades and decades of misinformation, of stigma, of discrimination. But if we go in and we say, you're a homophobe, we're not going to win that guy over. We're not going to change his mind. This is an invitation as much to my world, because I think we have often reacted in a way that makes sense. We have reacted from anger and hurt. And I can't fault us. I have so much anger and hurt in me. I grew up on the myth, the story, that in Canada, you were, as a kid, you can be whoever the hell you want to be. And it is terrifying to feel that be taken away. But we made a promise to the generation right after mine, the generation that was the first, those who were going into school in the late 2010s, the first kids who went in and they learned that trans people existed. They learned a more true story of genocide, of colonization, of Canada's legacy when it comes to newcomers and migrants. They learned truths that my generation was denied, and that undoubtedly, based off this color of some hair, some of y'all's generations were also denied. But they learned those truths, and we told them that you get to be whoever the hell you want to be. And now we're taking that space away. One of my worries right now is that we're forgetting and we're moving beyond the trans conversation. Premier Danielle Smith introduced the notwithstanding clause to ram through her anti-trans policies in December, and it hasn't been in the headlines all that much since. When we did our stunt at the Alberta legislature, it was the perfect story. It was in the legislature. We had parents who were ready to meet with the premier. We had our friends in the NDP, including Janice, echo and ask the premier if she would meet with these parents. And it was a reframe. It wasn't a bunch of, in Love to My World, it wasn't a bunch of radical, scary-looking trans people. It was a bunch of wholesome moms. And it was the day before media historically would have been so keen to talk about trans people, Trans Day of Visibility, one of our guaranteed media days. But we didn't get many bites because interest is going away. And there's a piece of that where we can talk about like mainstream media and the shift to the right. But we can also talk about how everyone is moving on because most people don't know all that many trans people. I have seen, 2 years ago, there was a ton of advocacy and engagement when we started to see anti-trans policies come into the Canadian ecosystem. And it feels like that attention is fading now. And the truth is that it's become normal. It's become normal for some kids in your province, some 12,000 kids, to have less rights than their peers do. And so my ask, my call to action, is to keep talking about it. And again, don't go and always pick a fight with your neighbor, but keep it as part of your conversation when you talk about what's gone wrong in Alberta. Talk about how a premier who preaches freedom is denying freedom to some kids. Talk about a premier who says she cares about families, but is putting parents of trans kids through living hell. Now, as we look ahead, I have a few, I like calls to actions, and then I do like to allow some back and forth and dialogue. And so I think I have about 5 minutes left before I shift to what the hell do you want to ask me, if anything. And I have a few pitches, because all of you have cell phones, and we are in an era where data is important, and getting more organizers into our ecosystems is important too. And so I would invite everyone to take out your phone. Sometimes I do that and the audience doesn't move, so thank you. And I'm going to start by encouraging you to go to transactionalberta.ca. Transaction Alberta is one of the groups that formed immediately after the announcement of anti-trans policies. And they work very closely with my team at Career Momentum. We do the national ecosystem and movement piece, and Transaction Alberta is doing the provincial equivalent. And if you go to that website, you'll see a gorgeous photo of Victoria Bacholtz there, but if you see at the bottom of your screen, there's a sign-up bar. And please go and sign up and join their list so that the next time that they need you to scream at the premier, you can do so with them. And I know that we've all sent so many goddamn letters and signed so many goddamn petitions. And I understand, it feels like it's not doing something, but what it does do is it means that we can go to a journalist and say 12,000 Albertans took action. And they care enough that they emailed the premier and demanded a meeting, and she still refused. There is power in that story. The second piece is to stay on your phones and go to forourfamilies.ca. We had these 10 parents who spoke up, and they wrote an op-ed in the Calgary Herald, and I think Monday we're releasing videos from their testimonies on the legislature grounds, and we're demanding that the premier meet with them. And so my ask is that you go there and you fill out the form at the bottom that will send an email, yes, to the premier, but also to your MLA and to the leader of the official opposition, urging and echoing the call for a meeting between the premier and these parents. We're doing that very strategically because the public's empathy with trans people, their understanding of us is not as high as I'd like it to be. But oh my God, do they understand the look in a mom's eyes when they're speaking from the heart about the harm to their kid. So that's maybe my other encouragement, is to think not just about what our reactive instinct is, but what a winning strategy could be. I often say, I want trans people to be front and center because we're great, but I need the dads and the moms more than anything right now because our opposition has more money than we do. They have a narrative that they have message tested, and they're not afraid to malign us. So when we have parents and allies speaking up, we are all the more powerful. My last piece is to tell you about, we're good. My last piece is to tell you about a project that my team and I are working on that we are excited about. We always try to do one big thing every year. Last year during the federal election, it was the Drag the Vote campaign where we got drag performers to bully gay people to go vote in the election. And Polyev didn't win, and I do indeed credit that to gay people. I like that you can do that for just about any size of population because it's actually only like 60,000 votes, and there's more than that many gay people in this country. So we can say that we won the election. Well, I mean, we got Prime Minister Carney, so maybe win is a strong word. But, where's that going? Our thing for this year, I think, again, one of the strategies of the opposition is to make us give up before the real battles have started, is to make us tap out. They want us to be filled with doom and gloom and to tap out because we don't believe hope and success are possible. And in my world, in the queer and trans space, I have seen that in a really big way. I have seen a culture that is demoralized, that is struggling to hold on to hope and belief that we can get through this. And I like to think about the fact that in the 70s and 80s, when we organized against government inaction during the HIV/AIDS crisis, that same helplessness filled the air, and we chose to organize anyways, even though we had so much more stigma then than we do today. And we organized and we organized. But I also know that we need to shrug off the doom and gloom of the moment. We also know that we need to, unfortunately, have some conversations with straight people. Thank you for whoever said sorry. And we know that those are hard conversations because it's hard to go up on a stage and chat with somebody who's going to ask you disgusting questions. And so my bestie, my Alberta counterpart, Victoria Bacholtz, and I have decided to put ourselves in the hot seat. We are hosting a Ask a Trans Person Anything event series all across Canada. No holds barred, no questions off limits. Because they say that we are afraid of dialogue, and we say we're going to have the conversation, we're going to win it, and that we actually believe that most Albertans and most Canadians agree with us. The event series is not just us putting ourselves in a hot seat with security guards. It is a Trans Canada tour. See what we did there? And it includes queer movement town halls across the country too, so that we can bring activists together, we can platform local movement leaders and develop strategies just like you're doing and we will be doing today and tomorrow, but to help us think through what our approach has to be to win back rights and get this narrative back on track. Also because gay people do love a good party and straight people and allies are welcome to enjoy them too. We're hosting Politics with a Drag Queen shows all across Canada too. And the Edmonton one is going to be during your Pride festivities. We're going to Fort Mac as well. We're going to be in Calgary. I have an inquiry from Lethbridge, so I think we're going there. But if you go to www.transcanadatour.ca, you can see more about the tour, and then you can go to the events list, and you can see an early RSVP for the events that are coming up in mostly June in Alberta. And if you are with a union, with a feisty, fun lefty organization, and you're outside of those cities, and you would like to ask a trans person anything, there's a form on the events page where you can express your interest in having the tour come to your community too. We want to do the big cities, and we're slightly more scared for the big cities because like the Rebel News ecosystem will show up there in fun ways. But where we're excited to be is in the Legion in a tiny town. To be in conversation with folks who are very scared of trans people. Because if we can actually humanize ourselves, if we can show them that we are just as crass, we hate politicians just as much as they do, except for Janice. But if we can show them that, I think we can actually change something. And I think that if we can show our movements that we don't have to be afraid of those who disagree with us, that most people can be won over and convinced, we can make Alberta so much more gay than it's ever been before. And so my message as I close and I shift to questions, because I think I have a few minutes left, is first, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for putting in the work. Alberta is where they are experimenting with a brand of politics that threatens everything that I love about this country, for all of its flaws. They're trying to use you as their beachhead, to use you to trial balloon a strategy that will irreparably change who we are as a people, who we are as a nation, and what this nation believes in. And y'all are the resistance. And so give yourselves a round of applause. And never forget the promise we made to those kids, because they deserve so much better than the hell their premier is putting them through. And with your help, we will build that better future and give those kids back their rights. Thank you so much. Now is when I awkwardly shift while saying thank you. We're now going to do a Q&A. Thank you.
Hi. So one of the things I noticed is that we have these conversations about the right is organized and the right has a lot of tendrils out, and then we blame everything on Danielle Smith. There are people writing those policies. There are people writing that legislation. There are 25,000 civil servants. There are more assistant deputy ministers and deputy ministers now than there were when what's her name was elected. And every single one of them has the power to change how they write briefing notes, to put a grind in the system, and none of them are. So when we go and have dinner with our friends who are civil servants or who are assistant deputy ministers or executive directors, and they're pulling down a solid 6 with benefits and travel expenses, they're the ones writing these policies. They're our neighbors. They're implementing these policies. So I'm curious why, as in conversation, we constantly say it's Danielle Smith, because it's not her. She's not smart enough. She's very smart. But she is not a single person in Alberta is smart enough to write all the policies and do all of the organizing. Why are we not holding our civil servants accountable? Why are we not saying they have a code of ethics that requires fiscal prudence? So why are they overturning decisions that were made 10 years ago about funding and fucking with us all? Why are we not holding our civil servants accountable? They are unionized. If they are under the management level, they can speak up, and the management gets paid a lot of money to ruin your lives. And their paycheck comes with a pension. So once they do all of their nasty policy, they will then have a pension while other people don't. So why do we talk about it like it's just Danielle Smith? Why aren't we actually talking about, Hannah Arendt talks about the banality of evil and the fact that you cannot have horrible things happen without a bureaucratic machine to make it happen.
Yeah.
So why aren't we talking about that machine that is not only in Alberta, but in Canada? Carney's government is doing it too. They're stacking senior civil servants and getting rid of frontline staff. The frontline staff are the ones that serve us. The senior civil servants, the ADMs, the executive directors, and the deputies, they serve the politicians. Why are we not mad and holding that accountable in these rooms where unions talk about this?
And I think it is like one of the struggles is, so we know that it is effective to name your enemy, right? And that is when we think about effective messaging, one of the things is open with a shared value. Everyone believes in freedom and schools where kids are safe and supported. And then the second is identify the problem, right? But Premier Danielle Smith is stripping rights away from kids and pointing fingers at diverse communities instead of delivering for your public education system. And so there are ways where, the top level, we need to present our good thing and then name, the politician indeed, because she is the figurehead of this system. But I do think we do a disservice if we don't think about all of the other ecosystems that are fueling this, right? I like to name the Campaign Life Coalition because it helps us understand that there is a deeper and darker agenda at play in the attack on trans kids. But I also indeed believe that there is a role for challenging how our bureaucracies are working, how our ministries are working, because there are many a time where they are in violation of their own codes of ethics. We saw this in New Brunswick when their government introduced a policy to strip away freedom from trans kids. The teachers union there actually said, hell no, we're not enforcing that. We will protect because our teachers, our contract stipulates principles in relation to freedom, equality, and human rights, and you are not able to put our teachers in a position where they have to violate their own values, their own codes of conduct. And so I think you are right. We cannot and we will not succeed if we make one individual the sum of the problem, because we have a much deeper crisis to deal with. But I think we also need to present that positive alternative at the same time. We need to name the bad guys and then say, this is the better future we can build instead.
The Overton window in the civil service, though, moves right. Every single time we have a right-wing politician, because right-wing politicians fire civil servants, left-wing politicians don't. They think, oh, somehow the guy that made
Yeah.
shitty decisions for 25
I think we have another, we're running out of time, so I'm going to shuffle us over here, but thank you.
Hi, I have a question about building momentum, queer momentum. The thing that I've struggled a lot is bringing people into the movement, particularly queer and trans people. Reason being, most queer and trans people in my life are exhausted. They're trying, they're putting all their resources, all their energy into earning enough money to stay alive and barely making it. And when they see a possibility to enact change, they just don't have anything left in the tank. And hopelessness, in my mind, is not individual. It's not something that just comes out of nowhere. It's cumulative, it's collective. It's looking around you and feeling like everybody in my life is suffering, nothing can change. How do we help these people feel like they have a chance?
So just an easy low ball question. I think there's a few things. You know, when the Premier introduced and passed her anti-trans policies in December, one of the ways that we responded was we unveiled, just to paint a picture, my org is like the scrappy gay movement org in the broader queer and trans nonprofit space, right? So we are small, we're 6 people, and we are doing our best, and we are funded by unions, so thank you, unions. But I think so we introduced a micro grant to basically say we want to throw $1,000 at as many local queer and trans groups as we could. And I was expecting it to be like, all right, we're going to get canvassers. We're going to have people knocking on all of the doors. And then I reviewed the applications we received, and most of them were like cute little gay barbecues. And I paused and I wondered, because it wasn't what I was expecting, but it was exactly what was needed. I think that in this ecosystem, investing in community and care in community, doing the work of hosting a barbecue and building a relationship with your peers and your pals, that is part of how we win. I think that one of the things that has happened is the late stage capitalism and increasing isolation and a decline of community institutions and infrastructure is hurting us in a real way. And I think we need to respond to that by getting back into those same practices. I don't want my community or our communities to only be in it when we have to fight. I think we need to be in it when we want to come together and hang out with each other, because those are healing spaces and they fire us up to keep the struggle going. And my other piece, I would say, is I think, again, the culture that I think a lot of leftist spaces has created reinforces the problem. Because I think that we fight each other a lot. I often joke, I am hated by the far right. The neo-Nazis love me in big and great ways. But I am just as worried about the moment where I'm going to screw up and be a human and be crass and jaded as I love to be, and then my ability to do my job will go away because of one activist who doesn't like me. We have a culture of purity and perfection across our progressive movements. I think it is sometimes worse in the queer and trans space, but I think we are an example of a tendency and trend in our movements that is political poison, because it ruins solidarity. I want to be able to hang out with the person who's going to screw up the acronym and mess up a trans person's pronouns. And yes, that's not okay, but also people are people. And so I think building a culture where we welcome folks in, the right is good at that. You go from having a weird feeling about chemtrails to being a neo-Nazi so damn quickly. Sorry about chemtrails. You're not Saskatchewan, it's okay. No, but when you come into our spaces, it feels like if you didn't read the gay Bible, if you haven't had a gender studies major, if you don't have a post-grad, you're not gonna feel welcome. And that's a problem. Because our movements, that means that the folks who thrive in our movements are those who have a lot more power and privilege. And there's a class analysis to be brought to that. The public's understanding of the left right now is not a working class dude. It is some academic who's going to lecture and condescend. When I am on stages at union events, the audience is scared before I open my mouth. 10% because they're like, oh my God, that's a trans person. But 90% is because they're expecting to be lectured and made to feel guilty. And yes, that is something my world does, but it's something all of our worlds do. And when did we imagine we had the audacity to speak and organize in that way? I want a movement culture where I can be a hot mess, where I can be at the dive bar, and where I can be a crass version of myself and feel welcomed into our spaces, because that is me at my most authentic self. And we need to build a movement that welcomes all of that instead of one where we're walking on eggshells in our own spaces. When we do that, our power is going to be such that Premier Danielle Smith is going to run away and change her name back to the old one. I think we have time for one last question.
Yay.
No pressure.
Hi. So I have some friends and family members who identify in non-heteronormative ways. I try to be an advocate, but I try to like really kind of, I don't know, just be there for them and normalize things. Because I'm like, you are normal and you are beautiful. But how, and then like try to speak out in another way, just like in private spaces where people are using non-kind words and things like that. But I feel like I'm a little bit passive and I want to be there for them in other ways. I have found that my cousins, I don't know how to, she's not my niece, she's not my nephew, they.
I hate the term nibbling because it's weird.
I was like, what am I
And I don't care about gunkles. The gay uncles can just be gay uncles. But sorry, continue.
My lovely human.
A lovely human.
My lovely human. They have opened up to me a little bit about things, and I don't want to push things, because that's also not my business. You know what I mean? It's not my business if you feel open to things. But I want to be active and not passive. But I also don't want to try to make them feel other. You know what I mean? By just being like, so how
So
is
that whole
it?
trans thing, how's it going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that question because I think it is the most adorable thing sometimes. I get like wholesome allies who like go out of their way to be like, that's a trans person. I'm like, y'all, I'm just like, can we calm down? It is fine. I'm just hanging out. There's nothing worse than like when you're a trans woman in the women's washroom and all the other women are trying to make sure that you know that you're allowed to be there. I'm like, yes, I didn't ask. Also, I hate when they talk in the bathroom because then it's, anyways, that's a different conversation. But no, what I would say is a few things. I think first, like, yeah, I think your instinct is right in the sense that you don't want to just like other them by reinforcing the like, okay, you're a trans person, I'm gonna come like chat with you and support you on that. I think just like be the chill family member is usually all that's needed. I mean, like, you know, buy them pizza sometimes. That's always great. Trans kids love pizza. I don't know why. Make sure you get the vegan one. Those are the things that matter. But what I would say more is just like for a long time we told allies, and there's two things that I hated that we said. There's a lot of things that I hated. The first was, it's not our job to educate you. And I disagree with that now. Like, yes, in my ideal world is not the role of the oppressed to educate their oppressors, but like who the hell else is gonna do it? And also, like, I love straight people. I do not trust you to have real conversations about trans people without it being weird yet. We'll get there. We will get there. But then the second piece is that we said, you know, allyship isn't about the spotlight. And I'm like, actually, no, like, get the fuck in that spotlight. Like, please, God, take it away from us. We are scared. We get death threats when we're in the spotlight, and you're like a wholesome mom or family member doing your thing. So I don't think there's one way to be a good ally. I just say lean in. That can be supporting your local pride organization. That can be donating to Skipping Stone. That can be all of those pieces that is putting the work in. And my biggest ask is just chat with your neighbors and stand your ground, right? Like if they're saying icky things, like don't go and be like, ah. But have a conversation and try to understand where they're coming from and why. And then try to like talk about the fact that you have a family member. That wins people over when they have a connection to us. Oh, baby, we get strong. With that, I'm going to let you continue your agenda, your program. Thank you. I'll be hanging out, and it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. That was such a good way to kick off the conference. Thank you so much, Faye. That was amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I just have to say thank you again. That was incredible. I always am feeling so inspired when Faye comes and talks with us, so thank you so much. We have a break now, so about 15 minutes. I do want to do a couple of housekeeping things. The first is that there are washrooms just out to the right. There are other gender-neutral washrooms out by the office to the back there as well. And also, as we're talking about allyship in education, it's really, really important for me to recognize some amazing people in the room who have stepped forward into positions of leadership at the Edmonton Public School Board, who were recently elected, and they're fighting the good fight on things like inclusivity and rights. on the front line. And it's not an easy job. So if there are any public school board trustees in the room, can you please stand up and say hello? Linda, can you stand up and give us a wave? Yes, yes. Sarah, Nicola, Melanie. These folks are doing yeoman's work at the school board, and we thank you so much for everything that you're doing. All right, with that, break. Go get some coffee, take a break, and then choose your own adventure. Have fun.